team.
Hello, this is Mallory, and this is the Orc Tactical Team. And something I want to kind of start with this one here is just the idea of bringing you guys back again to what I'm trying to do with this community there on the Google Plus page. So I'm going to put a link for this down below again, but just inviting you guys again to join for those who haven't. It's the Warhammer YouTubers, and I mean, what I'm really trying to build here is a spot where you can go in there and talk with us, and we can all interact and all these things. And what I'm getting to is that these topics I'm going to be talking about with these next couple of Orc Tactical teams came from there. And I think that's what I'm going to be doing in the future, where I'm just going to be putting out there, hey, what do you guys want me to talk about? And bam, that's what I'm going to talk about. So that's why I got 3 topics for this one here. And as well, I even had something there for, hey, for my next tournament, what should I be playing? Should I be doing Orcs or High Elves? They voted High Elves, off I go. So getting back to the tactics, now that I've kind of set the stage here, I have 3 things to talk about. The very first one here is from Steve Walker. This guy has been posting on my channel here for some comments for a while, so it's about time I go and I deal with one of his questions. And what his is one on actually Snotlings and pump wagons. Just asking, what do you do with them? What's the best way to use these models? And of course, it's not really an easy question, because I'm sure most people know Snotlings, not the best unit in the game. It's really a thing where right now in all the Games Workshop and for Warhammer Fantasy, swarms just don't really have a place. And I mean, it's great, they're unbreakable, but they die so quickly and they have such low toughness. Sure, they have lots of wounds, but all these things die so quickly. And then of course they had to add the other rule so that whatever they lose by, they like crumble as well. So they're in a really rough spot. So let's say that you have some Snotlings and you really want to use them. They're your best painted models. What's the best way you can use these guys in your army? Well, the obvious thing here is that they're going to be a throwaway unit. They're cheap, they have lots of wounds, so that's going to be their main thing. Now let's look at some of their strengths. You have lots of wounds and they're unbreakable. Now what this can kind of lead itself to is more throwaway units on the flanks, because in the center you can have things like your wolf riders, stuff like that. Because I mean, really, if you take a few little arrow shots and they have to take a panic test, well, you should have your general there, BSB, no problem. So if they kill, 3 of your 5 wolf riders, the other 2 can go up there and redirect and all this stuff. The problem is on the flanks is twofold. First of all, you can have the thing where, okay, they shoot your chaff and they panic and they run away. The other thing that can go to a chain reaction is they shoot your chaff, destroy them, and then that panics the other stuff out there. So if I have some wolf riders and some chariots on the flanks or something like that, we'll have someone with a little bit of panic tests, boom, that flank is gone, and I've lost a few hundred points to just a couple of archer shots. So the way you could be using Snotlings is out there on the flanks, so you can picture it as, okay, I got my couple units of Snotlings, I got the chariots are there working along with it, and of course if they're all up against something else, the Snotlings can go and redirect and make sure that your chariots can get off the charge or the cab or whatever it is. It's really there just to make sure to absorb that first hit. It's Snotlings, they're garbage, they're gonna die, but the whole thing is you don't want them charging you, right? You want, if it's chariots, you want impact hits. If it's your cavalry, you want to get your spear bonus for getting the charge off. That's really the whole point. Now, the nice thing about having these guys with being unbreakable, that means if they're shot, no panic tests. The other thing that's great is they have a lot of wounds. So if they get shot up, whatever, they're probably not going to all die, won't cause a panic test to your other unit. And really, that's probably the best place to use Snotlings. I mean, if we're going to talk like hobby-wide, Snotlings are also amazing for adding little extra details. You grab one of those blisters of Snotlings, you get tons of little guys in there, and then you just place them all over the other models, right? Riding on a chariot, or like holding on to a chariot or a cav tail or the giant or something like that, right? Or mixed in with the other bases. Like instead of having a rock on your base, put a Snotling. But like I say, that's kind of like the hobby side. Tactics-wise, it's really just there on the flanks. They're in a very unfortunate position. Swarms just don't really have a very strong tactical place right now. And the worst thing too is they come from your special. So at least if they used up your core or something. But hey, then again, this is orcs and goblins. Using up your core isn't a problem. I got my horde of biggins and I got a whole bunch of night goblins. I 25%, hell, I'll go 45%. I don't care. So maybe that's not such a big issue, but at the same time, sometimes I found that where I thought maybe I could just sneak in some Snotlings for fun, I'm already kind of maxing out my special between my trolls, my black orcs, the squig horde, and all that stuff, the chariots. So they're in kind of a weird spot too. But hey, like I said, if you want the best place to use them, that's there in the flanks. Now, the next thing he was talking about is the pump wagons, which is kind of Snotlings again. However, this is something that can actually be useful. Now, one of the neat things about the pump wagon that you don't see with a lot of the other chariots is the fact that it has a lot of upgrades. It'd be pretty cool if you get these upgrades for your, the wolf chariot and the boar chariot, but all these are just here for this one. I mean, you have ones where you get to reroll your dangerous terrain, you have ones where you're stronger, ones where you're ignoring armor saves, one that makes you faster, and you could pile these all together, and it could be like a night killer, right? Charge it into those units of knights, and, they're going to be ignoring all their armor saves, so haha, we're going to do awesome damage. One of the problems, though, is that when you start adding in all of these different upgrades, it gets very expensive. And it's like, well, what's going to be best for trying to take out that unit of knights? A pump wagon or a doom diver, right? One can be hitting you from across the board the whole time, and the other one is a silly little guy here. So what I find the best use is for these pump wagons is the fact that they can take out the little chaff stuff that's sneaky and getting around you. Because not only does it not need to be seeing you and it's 45, I mean, you can charge wherever it wants. The other thing is that you don't get a charge reaction. So they can't stand and shoot, they can't flee, they just get hit. So if you're dealing with something that's sending gutter runners around the side, or chameleons, or harpies, or something that's going to be going around your flanks, hassling you, shooting you up, going after your war machines, well, especially now in an age now where you're going to be taking so many more war machines to be dealing with all the monsters out there, a simple little cheap pump wagon to deal with this stuff is an okay investment, I would say. So what you'd really do is you'd set up your war machine battery, and then you'd have your pump wagon. And then whatever way they're going to be setting up those chameleon skinks or whatever, well, that's the way the pump wagon is going to be going. Now, what upgrades would you give it then? Well, I would say its number one thing that matters is just the speed. If you're going to give it any upgrade whatsoever, just the speed. Because when you're dealing with these crappy little things, well, who really cares about being stronger or ignoring armor saves? Like, oh my god, you ignored my chameleon skink's armor saves, right? It really doesn't matter. And the whole thing with like the dangerous terrain, whatever, right? It's not that big of a deal. I run my chariots over all the time. But getting that extra D6 so that you can actually be rolling, like the pump harder and the extra dice, getting 4d6, you can actually get pretty damn far. So that is a real worry then for a lot of these chaff units. And it'll really keep your war machines very safe. So that's really the best thing to do with the Snotlings we touched on, with the pump wagons. Again, just try and touch on it. Snotlings are garbage, but hey, if you're going to use them on the flanks where all of a sudden they don't need to depend on leadership and their multiple wounds can actually be a great asset to them. And for the pump wagon, don't go crazy. Don't do tons of upgrades. Use it back to be guarding your war machine battery and swiping away all the little harass units they're going to be sending your way. So there you go. That's a question from Steve Walker. Of course, I got it written on my arm. That's why I'm always going like this. Anyway, thanks for putting in the question. And now we're going on to question number 2 here. And this one, here I'm looking back here again, is James from Tale of Four Geeks. They're actually running a podcast. We've done some Skype games in the past. You guys should check them out. And James, you guys got to start putting out more podcasts. Anyway, he has another question because he's starting to get into Bretonnians. We're doing Bretonnians for the campaign here for the YouTubers. So he was saying, okay, well, Malorian, if you didn't have to deal with the taxes and all these little things, and you weren't allergic to peasants, what would you do to build your perfect tournament Bretonnian army? Now, one of the real caveats you have going into this, and one of the things that's going to play a massive factor in how you'd build this army, is really how the tournament is set up. Are they using the regular missions? Or what's the size of it? Is there any other comp on it? Obviously, that's a big major thing. Now, I'm going to go in the assumption that it's run as like Go GW tournament. There is no comp. We are using the missions from the book, and it's somewhere around the range of 2,500 points. Now, the first thing you've, of course, got to look at is make sure you have everything to cover all the scenarios. So that's not that hard, right? You're going to be having lots of banners in there. So really, Blood and Glory is never really an issue for Bretonnians. In fact, I find that Blood and Glory is a very strong mission for Bretonnians because you're farther up there to try and get into combat and kill things, and you can really focus your force. That's a big thing Bretonnia can do, is you say, hey, that unit is the one that has a banner and has a general and the BSB. All right, 4 lances into that one freaking unit. I beat it. I run it down. Hooray, I win the game. So that's actually a very strong one and nothing that you have to really worry about too much. Now, one you do have to kind of worry about is Watchtower, because Bretonnians is based around knights, and our core is pretty garbage. But if you are in this case, we're going to need to deal with Watchtower, you obviously need to have a unit to deal with it. And really, you don't have a lot of good options. So it really comes down to, are you going to take 20 archers, or are you going to take 20 of the men-at-arms? Now, archers can be always useful, so I kind of like them. At the same time, if you go with the men-at-arms, they at least have some armor. But then again, the thing is there that if somebody is charging the building and you're holding the watchtower, odds are they're at least strength 5, or they're going to be like the elite troops. They're going to go in there. So I would say even though you have armor on the men-at-arms, it doesn't really matter because they're probably going to be ignoring it. Now, as well, on the men-at-arms, you also have the halberds, and that's nice. Get some strength 4 in there. But again, they're weapon skill 2, they're kind of garbage, and really in the long run of it, it's not going to add that much. So for being effective in this mission and all the other missions, I would say you always want to put in that unit of 20 archers. And hey, it's cheap. Give them the flaming braziers. Yeah, stupid little thing. But, because then if you ever deal with any regen, pew, 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 you shoot it down, and, they're a great utility unit. Now, while we're talking about shooting, of course, you also want to max out your trebs. As much as I don't like taking trebs or peasants or anything, they are a steal for the 90 points that they are, or 95, whatever it is. I've never taken them because peasants. Anyway, they're so good of a deal for the strength 5 stone thrower. You got to take them. Plus, in this age where there's all these monsters, they're your answer. I mean, unless you can really trick guys into going with monsters and counter and all this stuff, for the most part, your only chance is to knock them with a trebuchet hit on the head. And again, if it's something like the Demon Prince, you want to be shooting those archers at it first to take off the charm shield, then send in a trebuchet to try and finish it off. So that's going to be something set as well. As far as it goes then past that, I've kind of talked on this before, but the big thing you need to have with Bretonnians is you need to be able to deal with steadfast. And the way that it deals here with steadfast is you're going to have to take as big blocks as you can. Now, you're not going to be doing this like, hey, okay, I'll max out my Grail Knights, right? Well, no. What that really means is your Knights Errants. They're your cheapest guys. They're the ones that you're going to be going in deep with and taking 15. And so normally I like to take 2 units of 15. Obviously, one of them is going to have the errantry banner for the +1 strength because, hey, that's just awesome. Now, I've been making mistakes in the past, and I give a banner to the other one. Only one of them can have a banner. It's going to be errantry. There you go. So right now you have 2 big lances, and those are going to be taking away steadfast. What you probably want after is something else that's going to be able to be going and doing some lasting hits or something like that. And that's why I like questing knights. Now, I know some people don't like them, but hey, if you're going to be dealing with something that's going to be a long grind because either they're stubborn or there's lots of models to be steadfast or whatever it is, you're going to need to have something to grind them down. Now, that can be done in a couple of ways. One, you can have questing knights so that you hit in with the big unit to take away steadfast, or as much as you can, and then the questing knights come in as well, and they're the ones actually still killing stuff after everything's said and done. That's one way. Another way is you can do this through characters. Now, this is dangerous because I see a lot of people doing this with Bretonia where they love it. It's like, hey, yeah, we get all these characters, the BSB upgrade is free, and look at all the options I have. And hey, with a frontage of 3, I can have 3 characters up there, and that's all you can attack, and I can do all this and this. And that can actually work, especially for a denial type thing. You can really load that up, have your 2 lords up there at BSB, make them all defensive. We've all seen Once Bitten do this. Smash into guys and do great. The real risk with doing this via characters is what happens when they die, right? Obviously, if you have lots of points into characters, that's coming out from somewhere. And that's usually coming out from having more knights. And one of the things I always say is, okay, this knight or this lord might be able to put out this output for damage. But when you look at the average points you spend on a Bretonian lord, well, compare the damage output to the same amount of points into just more knights. I could either charge in with this lance that has 3 lords in the front and go, haha, big smash, or I can hit you with 3 lances. And of course, if I get hit with some super spell or something like that and a lance gets decimated, I would rather have more lances than having some characters in the front. Or if I'm up against death magic and he's going to be killing guys off, I would rather have more lances than the one guy that's going to be dying from Spirit Leech or whatever it is. So I like the side on the part of having more knights. And whether you're going to be doing this through questing knights or more knights of the realm or whatever it is, you got to figure out something else there. Now, another thing you probably got to figure out is your magical attacks and where you're going to fit that in because, hey, vampire counts, they're kind of a thing. And if you go up against somebody and they got spirit hosts in your way or whatever, sure you can charge in with your lances and try and do that this way, but then probably they're setting it up so that they can counter. So you want something in there that's going to have magical attacks and it can kill these things. Hey, it might be the wraiths or the hex wraiths or something. Man, hex wraiths, those are a big deal for Bretonians. Going over and no armor saves, that's a big deal. Now you have a couple of options open to you. One, you can go with questing knights. Grail knights. The problem with Grail Knights is that they're immune to psychology. So if you go in there to go and kill something, you can't flee again. And that can be a real liability. Another way is you can do it through your characters. So if you have a character, say like on a Pegasus, he can be a multi-role, so he can be hunting ghosts if he needs to, be going after war machines, going after characters, great. At the same time is a liability, and he might be able to be charged, right? Or shot with a cannon or something like that, right? It's just a single model. It's a trade-off between one model and more knights. And so again, what I usually come down to is, hey, I would just rather have more knights. My counter to this is not going to be something like with the Grail Knights or with a character or something like that. Just take more knights, charge in, break them through the static combat res, and then if you need later, flee away. That's always a big thing with Bretonians in tournaments too. Do not be scared to run away. I know you lose your blessing, and that's sad, but if it's going to make you win, totally worth it. So really this is probably coming to, you guys hear me saying this over and over again, is just take more knights, take more knights, take more knights. That's where Bretonia is strong. And like I was saying with this as well too, is minimize those characters. I know that can work out, like we said, where you have those super characters, but what happens if you go up against a character that can beat you? They're set up to ignore armor saves. You're up against the Blender Lord from Vampire Counts or something, right? This isn't going to work. Or a Death Slan. You know what is going to work? Tons of knights. Another thing I've been playing with too here is just what to take even then for characters. Obviously you have to take a BSB, so that's going to be guaranteed. Now, what do you do past this? Because he can't be your general. Well, you can either take another, cheap paladin or something like this, or you might as well take a mage. And so a lot of times when I'm making up my list, I will take the one level 4, and then I'll take a BSB. And I love having lower life with this. Growing back up your knights, and it also really helps you whenever you want to deal with things like going into the watchtower. Because we already talked about how you can try and hold the watchtower, throw those guys in there, and just be damn ass aggressive to keep them away. What happens if you have to try and take the tower? Well, all your knights have to get off, but you know what? Toughness 7 knights can do okay when they go into a building. But either way, here's another thing. If you are going to go with the super character route, then you might want to go with the lore beasts, because then you have all those ways of boosting them up with all the characters, and you get the bonus to cast on your guys because you're a cav and all these things. But overall, that's a total separate thing. What I'm trying to get here and be clear is that you want to minimize your characters. Now, like I said, for the longest time, all I'd be running with is at level 4 and a BSB. Everything else into knights. And it would be crazy for people to see how many knights I could fit into my list. Now, one thing that's kind of changed here since in the days where I played these actually competitively is the fact that you see all these monsters now. And so one of the things you might want to actually do instead is you have to take that BSB and then you set up another guy for having a killing blow lord. Now, don't go too crazy with this. You want to make him with the killing blow and give him a few little benefits there to really maximize it out. But what I'm kind of suggesting right here now is running no magic. And this is kind of a scary thing, but I've actually been playing with this now, and it seems to be actually working out okay. Now, what you're really looking at is what's the biggest risk? Monsters, or is the biggest risk going to be magic? Now, think of all the points that prophetess is. She's a good chunk of points. Now, her main spot there is to be trying to beef up your guys and also protect your own stuff with having a scroll or whatever to make sure that you don't have the big lore metal spell take off a whole lance. But if you look at the points you can be getting for her, you can almost be just using those same points to be adding another lance in. So, you know, if they don't get off the super spell, you have 2 lances to hit. If they do get off the super spell, either the prophetess stopped it, or you still have the other lance anyway, right? It's all good to go. So I really think there is merit now in saying take no magic and then go with just the other character going for killing blow to be your general and the counter to monsters. And it's even thing too, you can play more defensive and say, I'm going to sit back here, I'm going to be shooting you with trebuchets. If you're going to come in here with these monsters, be aggressive, I can charge you with my anti-monster guy. So you can kind of play this little puppet dance. But really, I mean, there's so many different situations here. The main thing you have to come back to is look at the way the tournament's set up. I can't go and give you an exact 2,500 point list and say this Bretonian list will do awesome everywhere. Because really, depending on what comps there are and what scenarios, it's really going to change. At the end of the day, there's a few things that you really have to make sure you do. Make sure you take the units you need to deal with scenarios, so be prepared for Watchtower. You can't just say, hey, I'm stuck at Watchtower or whatever. No, be prepared for it because it might come up. Second thing, take trebuchets. They're awesome. As much as I hate peasants, they're awesome. Third thing, max out your knights. Don't go crazy with characters unless you really think you won't be seeing a lot of death magic or, you know, other lords are going to be killing you. And man, I'm telling you, you're going to see that stuff. So in the end, just take knights. It might seem boring, but the most competitive thing is just bodies on the field. You know, people don't like it when I just take a big, huge horde of Savage Orc Biggins and just slam into your face. But numbers win. Math is what wins this game. And so that's really the true way forward. So there you go. Hopefully, James, that's going to help you out and kick your other buddies' butts there at Tale of Four Geeks. And I have one more question here. I asked for 2, but hey, I can't say no from Anthony from the Sustainable Center. Especially because this is another Orc and Goblin question. Now, what this one here is going to be about is 2 different units. And they're scary because they're on round bases. One of them is fanatics. Second one is the mangler squig. What's the best way to use them? What's the best little tricks you have for them? Now, these guys are very different in the game. There's not a lot of things like this where they can't be charged. You know, you have other random movement things like the Hell Pit, like the, well, I mean, we already talked about the Pump Wagon. But they're stuff that can be countered. And you have to really worry about where their placements are because things can be coming back. These are different. These are something that are going off on their own, and especially after the Mangler hits, both of them are just going off random, right? You have no control, and yet they can have a devastating effect. I remember one game where I had my Mangler go through, like, it was like a Scrap Launcher and a Thunder Tusk and then an Iron Blaster, and just did freaking awesome. Now, I'm going to say right here that as devastating as these things are, they can be very addicting for new greenskin players because they're like, oh, these are great. Just pack them all in there. However, once you go against smart opponents, they can be a massive liability. Because in there, when you first look at like a fanatic, 25 points, that's not very much, right? Oh, a mangler squig, 65. Yeah, that's a throwaway. It's all right. It's all right. Well, the problem is that once you start going a little bit crazy with this stuff, it really adds up. You start putting in 3 of these fanatics and all your night goblins, 75 points here, 75 points there, 75 points here, and then a couple of little mangler squigs, another 65, another 65. Well, all of a sudden, we've been putting in the points that could have gone towards making another combat horde. And it really can get away from you. So you really want to make sure you're taking this in an amount that will actually do something for you. And let me talk to you right now the liabilities about these things before I go forward and talk about the crazy good things, because I want you to be realizing that there's a reason why Malorian doesn't take these. Now, like I said, you can't charge these things, but you can jump on them. And one of the saddest things to see is you take your mangler squig, you send him out there, and an eagle jumps on him, or a saber tusk, or whatever it is. It's like, okay, not only am I down points, but now I'm taking panic tests, and that's something that I put here in this board is just gone. So I hope it wasn't a big part of my strategy, right? These things just kind of die. And I mean, at the same time too, even if they didn't have something to jump on the mangler squig, they can just shoot the guy, right? There's starting to be more war machines out there, like we saw, to deal with the monsters. And I mean, killing off this mangler squig can be very easy to do, and a smart thing to do for your opponent. And all of a sudden, boom, you're 65 points down. And like I said, you just did a panic bomb to your own side of the board. Now, for the fanatics, they're a little bit more safer because they hide inside the unit. However, this also has its own little negatives, because what they can do then is just run off that eagle or that saber tusk in front of you, and you have to release them. It's not a may. As soon as your opponent is within 8 inches, you have to release these guys. And so, sure, yeah, you might send them out, and they might kill the whatever, eagle or saber tusk, whatever it is. But the main thing is that now you have all of these fanatics in front of your list. I've seen this where they have stuff like, okay, I got my night goblins and some other night goblins, and I mix in my black orcs and my savages. Anyway, they come in, you're forced to release the fanatics. You now have fanatics all in front of your army. Well, good for you. You might have killed 2 eagles, but now if your combat units want to move up, they have to move through freaking fanatics. And taking 2d6 hits for every fanatic onto your own black orcs really sucks. Really sucks. And whenever you're rolling on your own units, that's when you're going to be rolling like 12 hits or whatever, right? So you really have to watch out for this. So now let's switch over and say the ways that you kind of counter this and the sneaky little things you can actually do. First of all, if you're going to take a mangler and put in that 65-point investment, do not make it critical to your plan. Understand that your opponent can take it out anytime they want just by jumping on it or by shooting it. So that's the first thing. If you are building a plan that says, okay, this mangler is going to be destroying this, and then this will be able then to go through here, assume it's going to do nothing. Go into every game assuming it's going to do nothing. Obviously, the next thing then is to, when you're in the deployment phase, this is massive because first of all, most people when they're doing the deployment back and forth will put down their cheap things first, like the saber tusks, like the eagles and things like that. See where they have these. A lot of people will put one on one side, one on the other side, but other guys will have them, both on one side hoping to sneak around or something. So hey, if you already see where their fast stuff is, have your mangler somewhere else so it's going off to kill something, before it dies. Now, the second thing there, too, is you want to hold on to this mangler till it has a good target. You want to wait until you can see that big block of ogres, till you can start seeing some elite troops that can just run right through and just smash and destroy. Now, a good thing to pair with these manglers then is something that's going to be like a chariot or archers or something like this to help clear away that path. Because we know even if you get the perfect thing and your mangler here and their eagle's over here, that eagle's going to be coming straight for you. So you got to be ready to go and like swat this thing away and really watch that distance. And it can be really hard because a lot of these things like an eagle, we're talking 20 inches that you have to watch out for threat in a bubble that this thing can always come and kill you. So you have to be really ready and plan ahead. Like it might be your first turn, you're shooting your Doom Diver at that eagle because you want to make sure it doesn't kill your mangler. You have to be thinking ahead with that stuff, because once you get within that 20 inches, it's too late. And the thing here that's also hard with the mangler, even though while you're trying to look and gauge all these distances, at the same time, you have no control over how far it goes. You roll the dice, and that's off how far it goes. So it's very, very difficult. So once that all happens too, you probably also want to try and find, there's two real tactics here with manglers. One, you can go and try and keep it on the flanks. The flanks will mean that a lot of times it's not going to be running into causing the panic bombs and your main stuff like this here. Sometimes you can move up the flank and then go down. And that's like the dream situation, because once you hit into one side, well, you go through the unit, and if there's no room to place them, well, they can kind of hit the next unit and the next and the next. And in a dream situation, that mangler goes all the way across doing the 2d6 strength 6 hits, and you can just like destroy a large portion of your opponent if you can get it all lined up right. Now, the thing is that after it's done, it's going off random spots. So the other tactic is to have your mangler central, move it up, hit through that first main center unit, and then have it going all random. Because then, if it's in the center of the army as opposed to a flank, the random movement, there's a higher percentage that will actually go where you want it to be. Especially, let's say, if it's a situation where you jump through that main block in the center, and now, hey, I mean, if it goes back towards you, it'll hit that same block. One way is the one flanking unit, another flanking unit, a bunker. It can pretty much go anywhere and hit something. So there's two different ways of dealing with this. Another thing I can usually see is if it's in the center, usually it's a higher threat, and then so they're going to shoot it and stuff, and panic bombs and whatever. But again, I guess the main thing when you're looking at this as well, it's going to be very situational on what you're facing, and again, you're going into it assuming it's not going to work. Orcs and goblins are fickle. You can't trust anything, and especially you can't trust a mangler. And for my part, that's why I don't take them. When I go in the tournaments, I will try and reduce the amount of randomness absolutely possible. And mangler is just, why would I take them when I could take a chariot and change? Or I could take another unit of the wolf riders. The damage potential isn't maybe as strong, but hey, at least I know an eagle can't just go and jump on my chariot and kick its butt. Just take it out of the game. So that's that. Now, the next thing here is talking about fanatics. Now, we've just talked about how it's really dangerous and how they can pop out and block your own guys. The very first trick you want to learn with fanatics is that you get to pick where those fanatics go. And what I've done sometimes is, oh, you went and you moved that eagle right in front of me? All right, maybe I'll send one fanatic through you to try and deal with the eagle or something. Other ones might go behind me and hit a bush or something. Another sneaky thing that I've seen sometimes too is they'll go up and they'll move over some other unit, and then they want to make sure that your fanatics aren't going to go and get to them, so they'll move over an eagle to the other side near your night goblins. Sorry, I know it'd be nice to have a whiteboard here. I'm in Fort McMurray. Now, what you can do is send your fanatics towards that other unit you want to hit and not the one that's close. So always be remembering that. You can choose all these directions. You can choose to send it off in terrain and kill it if it's going to be a liability to you. You can send it into that one unit that's going after you if you want to try and kill it. I mean, if it's a legit situation, hey, you're charging me, of course my fanatics are going into you. Another one, of course, is, hey, you might be coming after me and this is a real fight, but you know what? That fight over there is more important. And another thing here, too, to remember is you can shoot this stuff into combat. There's no real limitation here because you're not targeting the combat. You're targeting a direction. So you can also do a thing where, okay, we got this intense fight between my trolls and your crypt horrors. All right, now my night goblins are going to move up and shoot them right through. And maybe while we're on this topic, let's talk about the idea of kind of catapulting your fanatics around. Now, what you can be doing then, of course, is using your own units to get these fanatics where you want them to be. Because just like we talked about with the perfect situation for the manglers, where it's like, hey, I'm on the flank and one unit to the next unit to next, it's the same thing here. When you hit a unit with a fanatic, it jumps to the other side. So if there's another unit there, you hit that unit. So what you can do is set up your own units to be in such a position that once you get within 8 inches of an actual enemy, you actually send it towards your own, catapult through, and hit a different unit. Let me try and give you a situation here just because this might not be very clear. So you have an eagle coming down your flank. Over there is the white lines you want to crush with your fanatics. What you can do is run up your wolf riders. The wolf riders are going to become a Congo line, make a little conduit that's going to go from those wolf riders to where your night goblins will be once they move up and will be within 8 inches of that eagle. They make that conduit. You move up your night goblins next. Hey, I'm within 8 inches of that eagle. I'm now going to be sending out my fanatics. You send the fanatics through your wolf riders. Of course, they're going to crush them really horribly, but they're now also hit those white lions and destroyed them as well. So that's one little sneaky thing you can do. Plus, it's not always a bad thing to be sending it through your own guys. Sometimes, especially if it's my trolls or if I'm running my savages with a 5+ ward, I'll send them through my unit if I need to get them to the opponent. Because, hey, if it's going to do a d6 to me and a d6 to you, and I have a ward save, I'm going to be ending up better in the end. Again, this is very situational, but never really take that off the tables. Never say like, oh man, I can't get to that one guy up there, so what am I going to do with my fanatics? It's always on the table to send it through your own guys to get to somewhere else. As well, this can be a defensive thing. Maybe it's like, okay, I have an eagle on my front or my flank. It's going to be drawing up my fanatics, but I'm about to be charged over here, and that's going to be bad for me. So I'm going to be sending my fanatics out that way so that if you charge on your next turn, you're going through these fanatics. You really have a lot of options with these, and it's really just about how creative do you want to be? I mean, I can't really give you every option because, hey, this is Warhammer. There's so many different units, there's so many different scenarios, but just keep these things in mind. Now, another thing that's really important is it's not like you have to pick one point of your block and like send it straight ahead. Let's say you are being charged by the enemy unit, and this is a time where, hey, it's legit. I don't want to send this off somewhere else or have it destroyed. I want this fanatic to do the most damage to this charging unit so I can win this combat. Something you might want to actually do is don't shoot the fanatic at them. Shoot it at a little kind of an angle. Now, what I'm trying to get at here is that if you put the fanatic through the opponent, you're going to do d6 strength 5 hits. Pretty cool. If they land on the fanatic, you're going to do 2d6. So it's in your best interest for that fanatic not to get to them, to be in their way, and for them to complete their charge, they hop on the fanatic. Now, sure, yeah, it means 8 inches away. 2d6 movement means, on average, it won't make it all the way there, 7 inches. But let's go and use our math to our advantage. If we're going to use the screens here as what I'm talking about, and this is 8 inches, I'm not going to shoot my fanatic from here to here. I'm going to shoot my fanatic from here to here, because all of a sudden that distance, yeah, this is all wonky, try to look at this, but that distance from that diagonal is clearly going to be farther away than what it is between the two units, and then gives you a much greater chance of actually hitting them. Now, at the same time, you're not going to be stupid and set it off at an angle like this, so if you roll a 12, it's like, oh no, I just missed a unit totally completely. No, you're going to be shooting at that corner of the unit, so that worst case scenario, I'm doing a d6. But hey, if I don't roll that 10, 11, 12, whatever it is to do that, hey, now you're going to land on it, and you're going to be crushing guys. And I mean, it really depends here too how many fanatics you're going to take, because you might want to be doing one from one corner to the other, one the other way, one up the middle, whatever. But one of the things you have to be also careful is not to be killing your own fanatics. Watch those angles. Don't be crazy, and just do lots of damage. Now let's now go on to being crazy and how many of these things you take. Now, I've seen some Night Goblin armies where, like I say, it's 3 fanatics, 3, 3, 3, 3, and it's 75 points over and over and over again. Well, one of the things you have to look at is, first of all, your liability of it. So, hey, if I have 75 points and all these things in fanatics and they can just draw it out, even though I can be very creative and try and get the best of every situation, what are the odds I'm actually going to be able to get that good situation? So a lot of times what I find is that all I'll need in a unit is just 1 or 2 fanatics. A lot of times I'll just take the 1. Because, hey, if I'm doing the 2d6 damage to the opponent when they're charging, which would be perfect, that's usually enough to swing it. If I really needed all 3 fanatics to do the 66 number of hits on them, it was probably a pretty desperate situation. I shouldn't have gotten into there. So really, a lot of times it'll be just the one or two that you really need. Something else I found that can be really sneaky to do this is have your fanatics actually back in your bunker. Take your bunker as night goblins, put your fanatics there, whatever the number is going to be, and all of a sudden it's a lot harder for your opponent to try and take them out, because obviously you want to be more than 8 inches away from the front line, but now if they move their saber tusk or eagle there to draw it out, sorry, they're not there. And then whenever you're ready, you step up with your bunker and you send it through. Again, hey, you might be sending it through your own unit to hit them. Totally worth it. Again, it also makes the math work in your favor, because if the unit you care about is actually charging in, and now they're going to be within 8 inches. They got to stop there, right? As soon as they're within 8 inches, they got to stop. So to try and put this scenario in your head right now, you got the bunker in the back, you got the troll horde, and the troll horde is about to be charged by the crypt horrors, right? This is a combat I want to go and put in my favor. Well, they're going to stop 8 inches away from the bunker. You're going to send them through the trolls, and then they're going to hit the trolls, hop to the other side, and then with all those angles and stuff, you can make it so they pretty much stop right there in the 2 inches, 3 inches, whatever is remaining between the two units there. And then obviously they close the door or whatever, they finish the charge. Bam, they take all these hits. Your trolls, you're only wounding on a 3+, they have a regen, you're not doing a lot. Those crypt horrors coming on here, they're taking double the number of hits, and even though a little bit tougher, I mean, again, we're not doing the math on a situational case, but they're going to be really devastated here, and they had a little chance of actually drawing it away. Another reason why I like having the fanatics in your bunker is that a lot of times you're going to see things going after your bunker. Of course, that's where all your juicy targets are, and when all of a sudden you get these knights that swung around your flank and they're going towards your bunker, it's a kind of a nasty surprise to have that fanatic come up the little side there and kill them off. Same thing we talked about earlier with the pump wagon being a defense for things like the chameleon skinks and stuff like that. Well, watch this. You got a little unit here beside me. Well, fanatic goes out there, and a fanatic will mess up chameleon skinks something fierce. Now, with this too, there's a few little other tricks you can do. The first one is Hand of Gork. Now, Hand of Gork is a fantastic spell, and you can use it for a couple of things here with both the fanatics and the mangler. What you can do with the mangler is a little bit more straightforward. If you want it to be in a certain spot, you pick it up and you put it wherever you want to go. If you sent it through on your turn, so during the movement, it goes through and it does its damage. Now it's done its first kill, it's going to go off randomly. Hand of Gork. Grab it, put it back in front of their unit so that if they want to be moving, they have to go through the mangler now. So that can be a really good thing there for the mangler movement with the Hand of Gork. Pretty straightforward. The fanatics, you can have a lot more fun. Now again, this is where if you're planning this as a strategy, 3 fanatics in a unit might not be that bad. You just got to make sure that it's a throwaway unit and something that you have to understand that there's a little bit of risk here. Because really what you're going to do in this case is Hand of Gork and take that unit of Night Goblins and either push it up so that they just, hey, I'm now in your face, and not only am I suddenly within 8, I'm within 2 inches. Obviously my fanatics are going to hit you and they're going all over the place. Again, dream situation, Hand of Gork, pick up those Night Goblins, put them on the very flank of the army, and now when those 3 fanatics are released, bam, 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 all the way across the entire battle line, doing massive casualties. Very sneaky, but it's a little bit hard to pull off. And because, I mean, not only do you need to have that spell, to have not the fanatics you already pulled away, you have to get the right distance, there has to be the room. Like I said, it's a dream situation, but the big thing here is just be looking for these options. So, Anthony, I hope that kind of answers your questions. There's so much to cover with these guys because there's just so many different options, and it's one of these things too where you almost have to kind of think like, how far do I want to be and how sneaky, because you actually get to the point where people start blaming you for going too far. As an example of something that some people say is cheesy and some don't, is a whole thing of like, all right, I have these Night Goblins and I got this handful of fanatics here at the side, and your opponent goes, oh, okay, you got fanatics, I'm going to move up to draw them out. Oh, no, I don't have any fanatics, they're just kind of sitting there. They're just like there with my dice. I don't have any fanatics. And all of a sudden they kind of like just threw away their throwaway units for no good reason, and you kill them for free. that's, it's one of those things where how far are you going to go with it? Are you going to do things like that? Others would also think it's cheesy, where I said where you're catapulting them through your own units, like the string of wolf riders to get over there. They say that would be cheesy. Another one too is if you were to do a combat reform, so that all of a sudden instead of the trigger being 8 inches away, you do your combat reform, go out into a little line, and all of a sudden you're not that far away at all, and it's very easy to put the fanatics through them. There's so many different things out there. You're going to have to kind of gauge your opponent to see which ones they actually think are cheesy or not. But in the end, all this stuff is legal. And if it's a tournament, let them have it. So there you go. Touched on a lot of things today. If you want to be able to put in these suggestions for future Orc Tactical teams, join the group. It's on Google+. It's really easy to sign up. It's called Warhammer YouTubers. And yeah, I'll put a link down below, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody's posting up their stuff, and great time. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.